Did you know that there's a wide variety of homeschooling styles, each with its own unique philosophy, methods, and resources? From the structured and systematic traditional approach to the gentle and nature-inspired Charlotte Mason method, there's a homeschooling style that fits your family's needs and goals. So, if you're curious about the different homeschooling styles that are available out there, stay tuned because today I'm going to be talking about four very popular homeschooling methods so that you can find the perfect match for your family's homeschooling style. Hi, I'm Andria and welcome to Bookschooler. I'm excited to share with you all of my experiences from homeschooling my four children over the years so that you can feel confident and equipped to homeschool your children. And by the way, I'd love to hear from you. What's your biggest homeschooling challenge right now? We all have them, right? So leave a comment below and let's talk about it in the comments. So first up is the traditional style of homeschooling. It's a lot like being at a regular school, except for you're doing it at home. And right now we're calling it school at home. And with this style, it's very traditional, just like being in a schoolroom where you buy the curriculum for each of your children, depending on their grade and their level, and you follow a set schedule. You use these textbooks and you teach your children, and you finish each lesson, most likely one lesson a day, and you are the teacher. Now, this is a great method if you like having very structured days where you start school at a certain time, spend a certain amount of time for each of the classes, and follow the state's curriculum or your school district's curriculum so that you can check all the boxes to make sure that your children are following the same curriculum as the kids in school. But this might not be the best curriculum fit if your child gets fidgety, sitting at a desk for hours at a time, like my two children did when we first started homeschooling. But one of the key advantages of the traditional style is that it provides clear, structured instructions and an approach to learning. This can be especially helpful if you're new to homeschooling, right? And if you're feeling overwhelmed or if you're fearful that you're not giving your children everything that they're used to having in a regular school. In this case, you would buy a curriculum set, and there's usually some instructions on how many days to do each class and give you a schedule so that you will know exactly what to teach, what your children should get out of the lessons. It takes all the guesswork out of the entire process. Another benefit of the traditional style is that it often aligns very well with state and national standards. And this can be very important depending on the state that you are homeschooling in. They may have very stringent guidelines that you must follow in order for your children to graduate, especially if they're middle school or high school age. However, the traditional style might not be best fit for every child, as some kids might find the structure stifling. I will say that it really is time consuming, especially if you're going to set your children up with all of the books and you're going to teach multiple children. When I started homeschooling, I did start with school at home. I started with direct instruction. And I really enjoyed that, and the kids enjoyed it because they had just come home from a private school setting, and I wanted to make sure that I checked all the boxes and everything, and I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing as a teacher and a mom. But that first year, it was really tiring, and we really had long homeschool days, which I wanted to get around. I really didn't want to do that anymore. If you do choose the traditional style, there are ways to make it more engaging and interactive for your child, and you can consider incorporating hands-on activities, educational games, and field trips. When we first started with traditional school at home, we joined a co-op and did lots of field trips that first year, and that really helped to supplement what we were doing so we weren't tired of those textbooks. Ultimately, the traditional style can be a solid choice if you're looking for that structured and comprehensive homeschooling approach. Just remember that if you do choose the traditional style of the curriculum, the boxed curriculum is what I call it, don't be afraid to make adjustments as needed. You don't want that curriculum to run your homeschool. You want to use that curriculum to help your kids learn and still to be flexible about all their learning. All right, next let's explore the Charlotte Mason method. This approach focuses on using living books instead of boxed curriculum. And when I say living books, I'm talking about like storybooks or chapter books that are written by one author who is passionate about what they're writing and very knowledgeable about this. These living books bring stories and subjects to life and make it more exciting for your children to learn. Now, the Charlotte Mason method also utilizes very short lessons. Generally, they're around 20 minutes each, and you do lots of different short classes throughout the day. Well, one of the most interesting parts of the Charlotte Mason method is narration. And I will tell you that narration really shortens up your day. And this is how narration goes. After your child reads a story or part of the story, they tell back what they remember, what they liked in their own words. And it's really just like them developing a composition and becoming a storyteller. And this process really helps your children to retain the knowledge that they've learned. Well, the Charlotte Mason method also advocates spending a lot of time outside. You'll go on nature walks and observe nature and animals and trees. Your children will sketch in their nature journals and write about the animals and the nature that they see. So children will learn science through their outdoor explorations. And you're just bringing science into your home classroom, which is really nice. You also study great artists and musicians. What's really nice about this is that you can choose the art and music that you study. You also might have your children learn to play an instrument. This approach emphasizes developing good habits in your children, and you'll work on things like attentiveness, kindness, and honesty. These habits help your children to grow into wonderful individuals. The aim is to make learning natural and enjoyable for every part of life. So if you have an active child who fidgets and doesn't really sit still for a long amount of time and you love the literature approach, then the Charlotte Mason method might be the right fit for you and your family. Well, the next thing we're going to talk about here is unit studies. This is when you take a topic that fascinates your child and you just really dig deep into that topic. You incorporate the history, the geography, and the science and all of that into the study, so that your child really learns about it. Like if they're really interested in learning about elephants, then you would read books about elephants and all about the different elephant species and their habitats. You would find out about their roles in the ecosystem, and you might even create a giant elephant mural or a wildlife sanctuary box dioramas, and then of course field trips to the zoo and things like that. So this is really an awesome way to do homeschooling because you can integrate so many subjects into the topic, and it's all about what your child really is interested in. And you can even practice math by doing some calculations about the amount of food that an elephant eats daily. And your children can work on their writing skills by creating an elephant storybook. There's all different kinds of ways that you can incorporate all the different subjects when you are creating a unit study. And so unit studies are really good for families that have kids of very different ages. The older siblings can read more advanced books and tackle those complex projects, while your younger children develop their reading skills by reading the leveled books and doing smaller projects, maybe even together. However, it's important to note that unit studies require a significant amount of planning. If you are fine with that, then this unit study approach can really work well for you and your homeschool, because you've got to gather the books and all the resources, and you've got to create your own lesson plans so that you're making sure that you are covering all the necessary subjects and skills that your children need. But the possibilities for unit studies are really endless. There are so many different topics that your children can study together. That has always been really important with me and my homeschooling, that the kids can learn together, all the way from the ancient times and medieval times to current times. So it is a wonderful way for your children to develop their passions and really get excited about learning. The last style we're going to talk about is the classical method, and I have spent some time in the classical method in my homeschool too. And this approach is based on the trivium, which consists of 3 stages. The younger children start off in the grammar stage, and I think that's from like 4 to 11 years old. And then they move on to the logic stage, which I think is like 11 years old to 14. And then the last stage is the rhetoric stage, and that is like, it's high school, 9th through 12th grade. Now, the grammar stage emphasizes memorizing facts, like the math facts and the math formulas and all the spelling rules, phonics, and all of these things. I remember when my children were learning, we put a little bit of that classical method in there too. And then they also memorized some historical dates. And while it might seem tedious, kids at this age many times love memorizing things. They love repeating information. That's why they really do well with learning by song and learning poems and things like that, and rhymes and games. After they're finished with the grammar stage, the next stage they hop into is the logic stage. This is when your child starts asking why and how, and they think they know everything, right? And so you just nurture that, have them doing more to think critically. You might have your children engage with logic puzzles. I remember having my children doing that and participating in debates or learning to identify faulty arguments in logic, and really just getting them to think, right? And think about why things happen and how it happens. And so this is focusing on understanding how ideas come together logically. The final stage is when they're in high school, and this is called the rhetoric stage. And this is around the ages 14 to 18. In this stage, your children are able to communicate their ideas more effectively, clearly, and persuasively. You might have your children write essays and deliver speeches, join a debate club, and they're just able to talk about more complex topics and discussions. The goal is really to have your child apply all of their accumulated knowledge to construct compelling arguments. Latin class is also a core component of the classical education. And I remember when we were doing this classical education with my youngest daughter, she was in a Latin class and we bought Latin books and everything. And you might wonder, why is Latin so important in a classical education? And that's because English words have Latin roots. And studying Latin, and actually I had my children studying Greek too, that can really enhance their learning of grammar and the English language. And that is really a plus for the classical method. Classical education has a long and rich history. It's developed a lot of renowned thinkers and leaders who have been educated this way. It is a very rigorous approach, it can give your child a really solid foundation. However, it can be challenging for some children who find it very difficult to memorize information or who prefer a more of a hands-on learning. So that is important to keep in mind. The emphasis on Latin and the structure of the trivium might not be appealing to all families. So make sure you consider your child's learning style before you commit to a homeschooling method. Finally, let's talk about my personal favorite, and that is the eclectic style. This is where you combine the best of all of the homeschool styles that you like, and you create a unique learning experience for each of your children so that you're tailoring their education to their individual needs. It's the approach that worked best for my family, and it allowed me to find that sweet spot where learning was engaging and meaningful for each of my kids. And it really helped them to develop their learning, their reading and speaking skills. It helped us to have the short lessons that we liked in the Charlotte Mason method. We took some things from the classical method too. In our eclectic homeschool, we had a structured routine. We had the short classes from the Charlotte Mason method and specific times that we would do certain classes on certain days. And this allowed us to cover a wide range of subjects, but also keeping things manageable and engaging for my kids. For example, we would start our day out with math, and then we would have a time for a read aloud where we would sit together on the couch and cozy up and do read alouds where I would read and they would take turns reading too. So we followed that with a short lesson where we studied artists and music. In the afternoon, we would read and have time for nature study. We had a lot of hands-on activities and spent a lot of time outdoors. And so I really like to combine a lot of those methods that I've talked about today. However, it's important for you to note that you can structure your eclectic homeschool in a way that suits your family, right? Your family's needs and your family's preferences. Some families may prefer to be more fluid and less structured, and while other families like that structure and that consistent routine. And that's the beauty of the eclectic homeschool. You have the freedom to tailor your child's education needs and your homeschool in the way that you want it. If you find that something isn't working, you can always swap it out for a different approach. It's all about being flexible and not letting that curriculum run your day, right? It's very easy to forget that sometimes when there's lesson 1 and lesson, oh, I'm supposed to be at lesson 15 on this day, right? So we don't want to let that curriculum run us. Being eclectic does require that you have to do some planning and organization, as being the parent. And so you'll need to research and select resources that align with your family's goals, maybe your religious values, and then you'll have to create a schedule that works for your family's lifestyle. And you'll have to also make sure that you're covering all of the necessary subjects and skills that your children will need. But the reward is a wonderful homeschool experience that is truly one of a kind for your children. If you are the kind of family that values flexibility and you enjoy variety and you really want a customized learning experience, then the eclectic style might be perfect for you. So just remember that the key is to embrace the freedom and possibilities that homeschool brings, okay? Well, the wonderful thing about homeschooling is that you have the power to choose how and what your children learn, right? Start with what feels comfortable and adapt as you go along, because the key to having a successful homeschool is to have fun and enjoy the learning experience together as a family. Well, if you have found this video helpful, don't forget to give it some love, give a big thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel, okay? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Yeah, let me know which of these homeschool styles resonates with you and your family, and watch the next video.